to start off with?
Thank you, Brian. Well, welcome everybody. It's an honor to be and a privilege to be here.
Yeah!
I know both Gary and I come from a theater background. I went to Carnegie Mellon University and studied theater there. Went to New York and did Broadway, off-Broadway, a lot of television, nighttime television. But the thing that really got George's attention, I did a play. I originated the role of Rachel Fitzsimmons in a play called Reckless, which is done a lot now in all the repertory companies. It was a great role, and George came to see it, and that's how he offered me the part of Sarah, because it was a character that sort of took the play and ran with it, and it was, and so that was by good fortune.
And he was in the process, because of the budget, of rewriting the script, correct? So he actually really wrote the role with you in mind, correct?
Yes, he did. Yeah, I mean, that's great, honestly, it's great.
Look, Laurie and I know this. Find your light. Hey, Laurie, find your light on stage. Laurie, I think, knew at a far younger age than I did what she wanted to do with her life. I wanted to be a professional athlete, so I went to the University of Arizona. 1967, I, with one hand tied behind my back, literally upset Woody Hayes in the Horseshoe in Columbus, Ohio. It's all legit, it happened.
Yeah,
I got drafted by the New Orleans Saints. I made the lineup, my starting lineup, my rookie year for $15,000, and I proceeded to sever my Achilles tendon in the original artificial surface in America. It was called the Houston Astrodome, and it was like if you took this cement floor and just put green paint on it. It ended my career. I delivered beer, which was actually a pretty good training, you know, for an actor, because you have to act when you deliver beer, you're competing. And then I stumbled my way into New York. By 1974, I worked with some very great teachers, some very famous teachers who are no longer with us on this planet. And by 1977, I had become that rarity, a working professional actor. I actually started off doing commercials. It was quite lucrative. And then one day, I remember my dad's been dead a long time. He died young. He was killed young. And I said I was going to go off Broadway. And I went off Broadway, where you do a lot of crappy plays with a lot of crappy actors, with a lot of crappy directors, and I was pretty crappy. But somewhere along the line, by doing all of that, and if you really love the craft, and that's what it's all about, you learn and you get better and you hang in there, because every no brings you closer to a yes. And by 1983, I was on Broadway, and I was working with the late great Archie Bunker, Carol O'Connor, Greg Grant, Elliot Gould, and then the film career started to take off a little bit from there. And just to talk about Steele for a little bit, if you watch carefully, I mean, I really think this is, in some ways, the most underestimated film of George. It's a dark film. It says a lot. There's some really wonderful acting in this film. If you really watch it carefully, and it's not just the dialogue. Forget what we're saying. It's the silences. Look at what's going on. Laura, you look at her face when she has to actually take Tim's arm off in the film, and you look at her reaction afterwards. I mean, that's coming from someplace, and you don't walk in off the street and do that. And it's years of training and all the work she did at Carnegie Mellon and everything. And initially, here's a little tidbit for you. I read for Rhodes, and George had the genius, and I really mean this, to say, you know what? I got a good actor in Joe Pilato. I got this blue-collar jackass Gary Clark, and I'm gonna put Napoleon, because Joe's Napoleon. That's who he is. He's the little guy. The two phallic symbols are the guns, and they are. Think about it that way. Power. But the real soldier, if you really watch the movie, is Steele. And when I do this, that scene, my death scene, wasn't even written that way. I love Steele. He was a survivor. He was the real soldier. And when George had my character finally get bit, that was it. It was over. I said, George, you cannot let me die like this. And I rewrote the scene. George loved it. We went with it. And you'll notice I make him a man of faith, makes him a Catholic. In the Catholic Church, suicide is a mortal sin. I justified it to him because Steele is the one guy who verbally and physically hated zombies more than anything and did not want to become the thing he hated most. Therefore, in the head, eat me all you want. I cannot become living hell on earth. And I just think the film has aged. I haven't seen it in a long time. I really think the film has aged very, very well. It's a dark film. It's been compared by Dr. Kim Paffenroth out of Notre Dame and Iona College in New Rochelle to Dante's Inferno and the Circles of Hell. It's and it's very interesting because we are all, if you want to get into a biblical context, we are all descendants of Adam and Eve, so the first parents. But this is Sarah. Sarah, in the Old Testament, is the mother of all nations. And at the end, on the beach, if you think about that great talk that Terry has with Laurie and Charlotte in the back area of the camper they live in, what he's talking about. And at the end, who's left? The three survivors of Jarlath and Terry and Sarah, Laurie as Sarah, the mother of all nations. It's an interesting way to think of it. It's taught at some very Catholic colleges. George is a heavy-duty guy. And I just want to say thank you so much because I love Chicago. And I go back a long way, but it's been a while since I've been here. You guys are absolutely awesome. Rusty Nails is one of the most amazing guys. I get to tell you great stories, but those are for another time. But he is a great guy, and I love him, and he knows I'm there for him. And Laurie is, and Brian, the best man.
All right, Matt.
I love you. And thank you so much.
Silly union right here.
And to the two guys who sprinted up for my t-shirts, they're great t-shirts. Trust me. And if you want me to sign them, and Laurie too, be glad to do it. Okay, guys? And thank you.
Awesome.
Oh, questions?
Yeah, we'll have questions. You spoke about the ending just a bit there.
Go on and on.
Gary, you spoke about the ending there. Laurie, you just whispered to me in the seat here that the first audience who saw that had a really difficult time with that ending.
Right, when we opened it in New York, the audience actually booed at the ending. So, oh, I know. They felt it was a cop-out, and maybe it was, I don't know. But, I don't know, what are your thoughts about that?
Cop out? There's always some, all right. Always some survivors, okay.
Yeah, well, people thought maybe it was a dream. They didn't know if it was a dream or is it real,
Yeah.
Redemption.
Speaking of survivors, before we get to questions out here, you had to kind of survive a very difficult experience shooting this. I mean, you were down in the caves, it was dank and nasty. Even in that pit scene where you had to shoot your fellow coworker, you could see your breath. That's how cold it was. Can you speak a little bit about the hardships and then also just about the stuff you had to do to survive that, the hilarity and just kind of the on-set camaraderie and some of the fun stuff that happened?